Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very sad and very somber episode of the Runaway Sports Podcast. As of August 11th, 2020, the Big Ten has officially postponed all fall sports for every school in the conference. That includes football, that includes volleyball, it includes women's soccer, it includes everything. And the fan base and college football fans as a whole do not seem to be taking it well. While there is a lot of factors going, and we're just going to jump into it straight away. While there is a lot of factors going on, I think the thing that upsets people the most was the lack of, I'm not going to say transparency, but the lack of involvement with the individual programs themselves. It seems as if this was a decision made between the upper echelon of the Big Ten and the university presidents. We don't know exactly what was happening behind the scenes, but it appears that it was mainly a decision made by university presidents and the commissioner of the Big Ten, Kevin Warren, more than the programs themselves. Many programs and figures from each program have come out with statements regarding the decision by the Big Ten. And I'm not sure what, if anything, is going to come of it. But it seems as of right now that the Big Ten aims to have some sort of football season in the spring. It's hard to really, it's hard to even get up to talk about it now just because it feels kind of also pointless now. But I'm going to do my best to continue on. Big Ten put out a statement saying that their primary, or I'll quote here, our primary responsibility is to make the best possible decision in the interest of our students, faculty, and staff. The mental and physical health and welfare of our student athletes has been at the center of every decision we have made regarding the ability to proceed forward. As time progressed and after hours of discussion with our Big Ten Task Force for Emerging Infectious Diseases and the Big Ten Sports Medicine Committee, it became abundantly clear that there was too much uncertainty regarding potential medical risks to allow our student athletes to compete this fall. And I think one of the biggest things people take onus with when in regards to this specific line of all of the uncertainty is, if there's this much uncertainty, why go through the motions up to now when you're a month out from the proposed start date to your season? Why is it that only a month in is when you're finally making these decisions, when you already put in the time and the effort to create a new modified schedule, release the modified schedule, give people a glimmer of hope that maybe that they'll find a way to make college football happen this fall in the Big Ten. I think a lot of what could be happening is maybe a lack of unification across all of the universities. I know there have been talks of programs like Nebraska who hadn't even come to a decision on capacity numbers, and how they had not yet ruled out the possibility of allowing a full stadium for college football. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was just uncertainty as a whole. Maybe it was the resurgence in cases over the last few months and some maybe more personal stories of lasting conditions that can arise from having the COVID-19. So while we don't know exactly what's happening, and it's unfortunate to say again, no matter what's happening, there will be no fall season for the Big Ten. Joining the Big Ten, we have the Pac-12, who not but, I don't know, maybe an hour or so later, announced the cancellation of all fall sports. And actually, they took a step further, saying that they were officially canceling all sports through the end of the year. And this included basketball as well. So they will be taking a step back one step back even more than the Big Ten did. And as I pull up the statement put out by the Pac-12, it looks as though they're going to be talking with the NCAA, and I'm sure the Big Ten will be as well, about the potential eligibility impact that postponing the season could have. Obviously, seniors and redshirt seniors who would have run out of eligibility after the end of this year. Well, what does that mean now? If they do play into spring, does that count as a full year of eligibility? Will the NCAA allow maybe another year of an additional year of eligibility on top of everything, just to give everyone a chance to finally play their last season? Or in a worst case scenario, is this it? Is their last season in their respective uniforms going to be under this crazy mixed up thing that's happening? And if so, that is an absolute travesty for them, and I feel for them 100%. I'm recording this the next day on August 12th, and so it's had a night and a half day and a night to think about this, but it still is disheartening, and it is hard to. I think people were necessarily looking forward to college football and sports returning as a whole as a way to get back to a little bit of normalcy in life. I think with the year that we've had in 2020, the idea of the start of school and the start of college football would signify a sort of return to normalcy and a return to what was once quote unquote normal life. And seeing the impact that the virus has continued to play on the country as a whole is very disheartening, and people are realizing that this isn't just a 6-month issue. This is going to continue to be a thing, and it kind of made people, I don't know, it made people, the thing about college sports is that a lot of people use it to escape real life, and now they're getting a dose of real life in their college sports. And I think it is affecting people a lot more than they'd be willing to admit. So what else? Other conferences, let's see. The ACC, SEC, and Big 12 have not made any decision regarding cancellation of fall sports. I know the SEC is pushing for having a season almost, it seems as if no matter what. I know the Big 12 kind of has a similar thought process that they are going to be pursuing a season to the best of their ability. There have been reports that they will be releasing their modified schedule over the next couple of days. So if they do manage to play football this season, there will be college football, just maybe not for our particular universities, which is, I think, the hardest part. And then the ACC, I think has been the most on the fence compared to the other two. But as of now, 3 of the 5 power conferences have decided not to play. 2 of the college Power 5 conferences have elected not to play football or any fall sports. And it will be interesting to see the ramifications of this, not only at a smaller scale, but on a larger scale. If the other 3 Power 5 conferences do play football, what does this mean for the Big Ten? What does this mean for the Pac-12 in terms of eligibility, recruiting? I think by not playing and seeing other 3 conferences play, if it goes well, quote unquote well, I think it could be a very bad look for the Big Ten and the Pac-12. It could have some lasting impacts on recruiting. It could have some lasting impacts on, perception, if that necessarily really matters. I know perception of a conference can play a large role for some. But if only 2 of the 5 power conferences don't play, what's the NCAA supposed to do about that? Obviously, at that point, I think I saw someone mention that it would almost be like a self-sanction that the Big Ten and Pac-12 would have put on themselves, to where in recruiting, obviously you don't have another product to put on tape in front of a recruit. You lose key pieces without them ever seeing the field again. You have a larger hill to climb when these other conferences are able to go to recruits and say, look, if XYZ happens, they're just going to shut down while we're going to figure out a way to do it. And I think that could play a more lasting impact than anything else if it were to come to that. If they are unable to come up with a way to spin this or put this in a way that makes sense, I think it could have a lot of lasting issues as we move forward. Of course, there's also the flip side to that. If this season does play out in the other three conferences and it doesn't go well, one, that's a shame, and I feel for everyone who would be affected in those instances. But at the same time, it's hard to know the lasting effects of playing in such circumstances. So at this point, I think everyone is kind of just in a holding pattern and waiting to see what happens and waiting to see what comes of it all. It's going to be a relatively shorter episode just because the only topics I really had to cover before yesterday were a potential Iowa game preview and the unfortunate news that Rondale Moore had decided to opt out of the 2020 college football season and was deciding to sit out and wait for the 2021 NFL draft, in which fans also took that about as well as you can imagine, where everyone understood that it was absolutely the correct decision for Rondale, but it was unfortunate because it had come to the realization that we only had 17 games of Rondale Moore. We had a full season, which we had some magical nights and some frustrating losses, and then 4 games or 3 and a bit games where it was definitely some frustrating losses and some interesting games. But that was tough. Then obviously, with no fall season, there is no games to preview, and so the Iowa preview was officially shuttered a bit, as with the rest of the written items on the docket for Boiler in Texas. So as of now, I am currently looking at other alternatives, things to cover. I think I will be reviving my Relive It series for now, so you can expect to see some Purdue sports content hitting the site, as well as hopefully some additional things that I'm looking into to help bridge the gap for basketball season 2 startup. Hopefully in another couple of months. We'll see what happens as time goes on with that. But be on the lookout for some new editions of Relive It. I think I will be focusing a lot on football for now. I think a lot of people would enjoy that. And I know I would, being able to go back and relive some classic Purdue football games. So I think it will be on the lookout for that, as well as anything else that I come up with in terms of a holdover period while we wait for basketball. If you have thoughts or opinions on what you would like to see on boilerintexas.com, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, Instagram, on the website directly, or even comment below on wherever you're listening to this podcast. But I think I'm going to call it there. This is a very frustrating time to be a fan in the Big Ten and at Purdue specifically, just based on what this program had coming back and what this program was definitely capable of doing this year. And it is unfortunate that we no longer get to see the fruits of that labor. But I think for now, all we can do is continue moving forward to the best of our ability. Everyone, please continue to take care of yourself. take proper precautions, wear a mask, social distance, and let's try and ensure that basketball season happens on time, and let's turn our focus to that and try not to dwell too much on the losses that we took here. But keep your head up, everyone. We'll get through this eventually. And for me, I hope you all have a great week. I am unsure if we'll have another podcast episode next week. It kind of depends on what will come out over the next week. As of now, I'm going to try to record and release another episode of the Runaway Train Sports podcast, but with the uncertainty, there's that word again, with the things that are going on and the lack of extra Purdue content, unless something comes out over the next week, we may be taking a brief sabbatical after only having a handful of episodes so far. But keep an eye out for that on Twitter. I usually try and put there when and what the next podcast episode will be about. So please go give me a follow on Twitter if you haven't. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider giving it a 5-star favorable rating on whatever platform you use to listen to it. I really appreciate it as we continue to try and build this brand and build this community. And I know this is tough, but hang in there. We'll get through this together. Hope you have a good week. And as always, boiler up, hammer down, hail Purdue.